Well, good afternoon. I'm Bill Berman. This is my wife.
Janice.
And we're going to be telling you or showing you about our wood cook stove, which we've had for 6 years.
Now we're going to show you the stove. This is the stove. We love this stove. And I'm going to start by showing you some of the things that we do. When we first got the stove, this top was just brand new, shiny silver. And I called the company and I said, "Is this going to stay this way?" And he said, "No, it won't. Don't be disappointed. It's going to turn blue." Well, that was a little discouraging, but I kind of like how it turned out. It just matches the stove a lot better. And it's easy to clean. You have to clean it since we were talking about cleaning, you have to clean the top of the stove when it has gotten to the point where it's cooling down. The fire has died out of it. If you can put your hand on this cool end long enough to be able to run a scratch pad across here, then you need to do this while there's heat to the stove. If you try to clean the stove while it's cold, like it is now, any moisture that gets on here will create a rust area. It's a fine little film of rust, but it does it just almost instantly. So you need to clean the top of your stove while it's got enough heat to it, and as you move down and you're working this way and you get to the hotter side, it has begun cooling down as you go. So it reaches a point, you do get some warm spots on your fingers, but anyway, it must be done while the stove is warm. And you see the steam rising off as it dries. I have a few little pots and pans that I would like to show you that we use. And I have some over here. I have this old-fashioned waffle iron that turns over. Obviously, when it's hot, I can't put my hand on the top of it like I'm doing now. And then that just turns over, and that's how you continue to keep your iron hot. And then it's got this little lip around the edge so that if your waffle batter should run over, it'll run into that little pot. Doesn't always do it so meticulously as you'd like it to, but this is another one. When we decided that we had this idea many years ago that we wanted to live off the grid. And we found this little Belgian waffle iron to put on your stove in Minnesota, I believe. And it's got your temperature control here. And when you flip it over, it's got temperature control there. And we have used the daylights out of this iron. And since we moved up here onto the mountain, it's been very, very useful. Then there are your bread pans, which make a very nice loaf of bread. This one is a popover pan, but you can use it for muffins or anything else that wants that shape. And then we have our corn pan, and these you can find at antique stores. This little thing right here is well used. And I could not afford to purchase one of these new, and we were at a yard sale. These are somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $65, and we were at a yard sale, and it was $8, so we grabbed it. It's a humidifier, and you fill it to within about 1/4 of an inch of the top here with water. If you fill it any closer to the top, this water will start boiling when it's sitting on top of the stove. As it's creating steam in the room, it will also come to a boil, and I've had it boil out around the edges, and it makes these noises that sound like a cannon just went off. And it's scary at first till you finally start getting the hang of what happens, the noises that your stove makes. So that would just sit on here, and the steam would just come on out into the room. You have to pay attention to the fact that it's going down. It won't hurt it if the water just finally just steams completely away. Many times it has sat here on the stove with no water in it. But I like to try to keep it full. And then I like to get a little atmosphere into the room during the holidays because once we turn this stove on about the end of October, maybe even the middle of October, it's on 24/7 until summer, until spring, when we're done using the stove. So at Christmas time, I like to drop in maybe a stick of cinnamon and a few little whole allspice little balls of allspice, and some clove stems, and just throw those in there, and then it just smells like there's a pie baking when someone comes in the door. The whole house smells very nice.
The stove is built at a low level, which we found is very good. Some of the other stoves are quite a bit higher, and then when you put a large pot on top, you can't see into it, especially when you're the height we are. And right below the firebox, you can see this is the firebox here. We can fill that wood. We pack it right to the top at night, and that will give us about 8 to 9 hours of burning, which is very adequate. This is showing right here that we need to replace this gasket. Anyway, what happens is once you get a good fire going, this area right here over this plate is the hottest area. And I even measured it recently, and there was about 20 to 30 degrees difference, maybe 15 to 20 degrees difference. And so this is your hottest area. You're about medium heat and a lower heat down here. And we've had a little rack, for cooling cookies or whatever that we use, and we just place it here, and we toast our bread right here. Very simple, and it works. And we just flip it over. And here's the oven. It's quite a large oven, has some nice stainless steel sides and everything. We ordered this door with the glass in it. These will take a nice size sheet for cookies or whatever you may bake. It's quite large. And sometimes we, in the evening, when we built the fire and we're ready to go to bed, we packed the stove, and you could leave the door down and you get a lot more heat into the house. But sometimes we'd want a little more heat, maybe during the day when it's in the winter time, we want a little more heat, but we don't really want to open this up, because you ever bang your knee on one of these corners, it's not too comfortable. So I rigged up a little wire that we hook onto this little shelf support, and we get a lot of extra heat out of there. This glass also comes with a thermometer in here, which is 50 degrees off. So we have to figure, if we want 350, we have to get it up to 4. And maintaining the heat is something that Janice will talk about. Let's see, and then there's the little shelf up here. This is not really a warming oven, though we were kind of wanted to get one, but at that time they were still working out some details on it. Now they have a beautiful one that has tempered glass sliding doors, so you can actually see what's inside. But anyway, it's a very nice stove. We've been very happy with it. And and this is the one to show you here. This is the way you get into the ash tray, and here it is right here. And when we do the cleaning of the stove shortly, we'll go into that in a little more detail. Got to get this just in the right spot. I think that's pretty much it as far as the details of the stove. Oh, this one little area here. This is a little bar I don't know what kind of metal it's made of, but when the stove is very hot, you can put your hand on this, you can lean on it, and you won't burn yourself. And that's basically, it's a guard. But these little screws here that come through from the stove top, those you can get burned on. The Pioneer Princess stove has a manual and an automatic damper. We had the automatic, but we chose to go with the manual. It was just a little easier to control. Straight up here is pretty much wide open, and we close it down quite a bit, just about where it's barely open. You can just barely hear it burning. That's for when we're burning at night, keeping the house warm. we put this tape. It's this tape here handles up to 400 degrees, and these metal get pretty hot. So we put that on there, and so it's a little easier to take care of. We originally had these handles were the same kind of a steel wire, kind of, I don't know what you call that, and they were getting too hot. So we told them, and they sent these, no charge. They're a very fine company, the Pioneer Stove Company. They're out of Kentucky, and they sent us these, and we replaced the other ones. And around the back here, we have some controls that you need to see. This is what allows the heat to go around the oven. Now the heat does go into the oven even when it's at this position, but when we push it in, then it directs the heat around the oven. And anyway, it's a pretty simple mechanism. And then also in the firebox, to get the ash to drop down, this little thing here works back and forth. So it helps get the ashes down there after you finish the fire. And then down here we have a draft control that allows air to come up through that opening where the two bars are to give you a quick start, you know, when you're starting in the morning, want a quick fire. And it works really well. One additional comment about the bell draft is that when you open it in the morning, sometimes we've even used it in the evening. You've got to make sure you close it down again after, say, 5 or 10 minutes. If you leave it open, your whole night wood supply burns up very quickly, and suddenly the house gets cold in the middle of the night. So we've learned the hard way. And on the back here, we have a 20-gallon reservoir. This is one of the lids here, and it holds water up to about here. Not much to see. It's pretty dark in there. But there's a cover on both ends, and then we had to use brass fittings here, the pipe and the faucet, and this we get nice hot water all winter long, and because we don't run the stove very often during the summertime. Right now it's just beginning of spring. We're still running it a little bit, and then we have a little kitchen stove here, gas, that we use during the summertime, which we're going to replace soon here with one that doesn't have to have a pilot, and it means we can even bake during the summertime. After several years, I decided that we got tired of filling this 20-gallon reservoir with the faucet on the sink, so I rigged up a pipe coming up from the floor with a float valve here so that it would fill itself. We did find when we had the valve open all the time that eventually one time the float valve seemed to have stuck, and so we had a little overflow. So we now, when we have water, you know, when it gets empty, we just open the valve right here and let it in. And then when it gets to where we can't hear the water running, then we just turn it off so we don't leave it running with wide open all the time. But anyway, it works, does the job. And again, like the bell draft in the back, this door here can act the same way, because if that's a little bit open, it'll draft up and it'll burn your wood up, and it'll also cause a very high heat. And you don't want this top to get like 600 degrees, which a few times it has gotten red, you know, in the evening where it was a little darker, we could see it. So you got to make sure this is closed and that was closed, and of course this door closed, and then you get a nice burning fire through the night. Since we've had the stove about 6 years, we've learned something about the cleaning of this stove that we didn't know originally, as we kind of trial and error. But you kind of have to start at the top, and since the pipe is the highest thing, we start from there and we clean all the way down to the bottom, and we'll show you as we go. First thing we have to do is take this stovepipe out.